Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you. In this one, we are going to be discussing the finally long-awaited ban list update from Konami here in Master Duel. Yeah, we are here just a little over 4 months since the launch of the game, and we have finally received our first ban list update. However, I think I speak for a lot of people when I can say this definitely was not what we were expecting in terms of what our ban list was going to look like. But there are some key pieces of information to take away, not only from the ban list itself, but from the additional information that Konami has provided here. So, let's see what we've got here. Master Duel has announced a Forbidden Limited List update. It will be implemented on May 8th. So, it is currently Jesus Christ, April 25th. I believe it was actually the evening of the 24th, about maybe 8-ish hours ago, that this actually got announced. But yeah, so we are on the expected timeline from Konami that they gave us towards the beginning of Master Duel, wherein they told us that they were going to update us about 2 weeks before the ban list would go live, except for in the event of an emergency ban list. So this does fit in with that timeline. So we know going, from here on out, it's going to be about 2 weeks when they announce the ban list. This timing might also indicate when they're going to be releasing ban lists in the future, maybe a week into a season, which generally makes a bit of sense. Players have that first week of the season to adjust their builds and climb with older builds / decks if they want to. So yeah, that timing actually does make a lot of sense. So another thing, from May 8th to June 9th, so for the next month after the ban list drops, newly restricted cards can be dismantled for 20 additional craft points. So if I'm reading this correctly, as it says in the example, the first 2 copies of Ben 10 you dismantle will give you 20 additional super rare craft points. So, that's another question we've had about the ban list for a while now, right? We've been wondering, is Konami actually going to give us full refunds for cards that get limited or banned? And it looks like they will. Again, up to the number of copies that got hit. So, if you've got 3 Ben 10 and you want to just, if this is enough to fully cause you to dismantle a Drytron altogether, or at least all of your Ben 10s, just remember you're only going to get full refunds for 2 of them. That third one will not give you a full refund because the card is still at 1. Alright, now that we've discussed some of these facts here that we know about the ban lists, or at least, again, that we know regarding ban lists based off of this one in particular, let's take a look at the actual changes to the list itself. Forbidden, there are no changes, no cards got banned. That's not necessarily a bad thing, Bans are not always needed in order to adjust the format. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's limited. We've got 2 cards here. The first being Cyber Angel Ben 10. I've said this in pretty much any amount of ban list discussion I've done on the channel, but there was no chance in the world Ben 10 was not going to go to 1. This card is definitely not allowable at 3. It's really just not. It makes Drytron, particularly the Herald engine, far too consistent. I've said this before quite a few times too regarding Drytrons, and particularly Herald of Perfection and Ultimateness. I am still of the belief that Heralds are not the problem. Heralds in and of themselves require a lot of commitment in order to be able to summon, and then they also require a lot of additional resources in order to be able to use effectively. The Heralds are not the problem. The Heralds being too consistent and having too much fuel are the problem. So the consistency issue is at least somewhat being addressed here by Ben 10 going to 1. This will actually also in turn affect the ability for Drytron to refuel, as Eva is now more difficult to search out, right? Drytron's going to have to rely more on making a Union Carrier to search the Eva out, which is going to require, I don't play Drytron myself, but I'm assuming requires slightly different combo path, or maybe even additional combo pieces to do consistently. So we will be seeing a change in Drytron. It remains to be seen if they will be fully gone from tier 1. I suspect they will probably still land at about tier 2, maybe 3, but I expect probably tier 2. I don't expect Drytron to move down a super significant amount, but limiting Ben 10 will still see a significant impact to Drytrons themselves. Other card that got limited is Conquistador of the Golden Land. This one was actually really surprising to me, but the more I thought about it, the more it kind of makes sense. So I think we were all expecting Eldritch to get touched in some capacity, but what a lot of people I saw were hoping for was Skill Drain getting limited to 1. Now, Skill Drain just got put to 3 in the OCG on the most recent, or the TCG, on the TCG's most recent ban list, and from what I remember has been at 3 in the OCG for at least a little while now. I don't remember exactly how long, but The thing with the hitting the floodgates, particularly skill drain, is like, if you try to hit Eldritch's floodgates, they're just going to play different floodgates, right? And yeah, skill drain is definitely the most powerful, arguably, one of the most powerful floodgates. But I don't, and this is an unpopular opinion. I'm well aware of that. What I'm about to say is an unpopular opinion. I don't think skill drain is a problem at 3 right now. I just think in our current format, even in Master Duel, it's not like an oppressively powerful card. It is an oppressive card for sure. While skill drain is of course extremely annoying if you're playing, any deck that relies on monster effects, which of course is the vast majority of them. But it's not oppressively powerful. There are not a super significant amount of decks that can utilize skill drain consistently, and of course skill drain cannot be searched consistently either. And I think for those reasons, it's fine to be at 3. So what are we seeing here with the Conquistador hit? Well, we're seeing Eldritch being targeted specifically, as opposed to stun decks or stun cards like Floodgates, like Skill Drain. We're seeing Eldritch specifically being targeted. Now, the interesting thing I think about these two cards being the only cards getting limited is that they do address a lot of player grievances, right? Eldritch and Drytron are by far the most complained about meta decks in Master Duel. They really just are. There's no denying it. And it seems like Konami is really trying to address the decks that people are most sick of seeing. We'll see a lot more evidence of this here when we get into the semi-limited cards, but just these two limits alone tell me that Konami did specifically aim to hit Drytrons, and again, specifically Eldritch by hitting the Conquistador. I have mixed opinions about this hit, honestly. I don't think it was necessary by any means. Definitely not necessary. But I don't know that it's a bad hit. Honestly, I really don't. I'm honestly actually still trying to suss out how I feel about this hit, because it's very, it's got layers to it. Hitting the Conquistador to 1, if you're going to hit an Eldritch card, is actually a pretty smart hit, because a lot of Eldritch's power doesn't even necessarily come from the Golden Lord himself or the Floodgates. And that might sound really weird. It's like, well, it's all about the Golden Lord and the Floodgates to make sure your Golden Lord can't be stopped, right? What else is there to Eldritch? I think a lot of the power of Eldritch that I think some people may look over is the fact that Eldritch is so consistent with its themed back row, right? Like, Eldritch always has 2, 3, or 4 face down cards at pretty much any given time, and that's because of their themed cards like Conquistador being able to banish themselves from grave to set up more back row. So seeing this Conquistador go down to 1, well, obviously this is one of the better Eldritch, trap support cards, being able to, destroy any face-up card on the field. But it also searches the Eldelixirs and lets you, set them from deck during the end phase. Obviously a lot of the Eldritch spells and traps do this. I think pretty much all of them do, actually. But Conquistador's ability to not only destroy, not only be used as a monster for overlaying, and also on top of that, like everything else being able to search, I do think makes it the best Eldritch card to hit. Again, I'm not sure that this card needed to get hit at all. I think it actually probably could have gone to 2, and then it would have been fine. But again, the fact that we're seeing it at 1, when we see all these other cards at 2, where I would also expect to see Conquistador, kind of leads me to think again that maybe Konami is taking these player opinions more into account than they would during a normal ban list. So let's go ahead and take a look at these semi-limited cards, as long as we're talking about them, and we're looking for more pieces of evidence that Konami is hitting things that the players are complaining about. We've got more evidence right here in the form of DD Dynamite. Now, I will say that I don't think this card just got hit because people were complaining about it, or necessarily even just because of the bots. If you remember, we've actually seen DD Dynamite do fairly decently in Master Duel tournaments. I think a winning tournament user a couple of weeks ago actually won with Eldritch and DD Dynamite. It was kind of a meme for a little bit, but either won or placed really well. I don't remember off the top of my head. Now, I do think DD Dynamite is still probably a smart hit, because we're in a best of 1 format, and burn decks can sometimes kind of steal wins, and they're a lot better at it in formats like this. But of course, there's also the bot issue, and I personally think it feels really bad to hit a card just because of bots. But as I just said, I don't think they hit this card only because of bots. I think this card partially got hit because of bots, and also partially got hit because we're in a best of 1 format. Now, what I'm curious about, though, is why they limited it to 2. I would have expected this card to go to 1 or 0, but, obviously, it probably wouldn't go to 0. But if there's 2 copies, doesn't the bot FTK still work? Because you only need to resolve 2 DD Dynamites in order for it to work. I mean, this obviously makes it much less consistent, but again, from as far as I know, this doesn't really stop the bot FTK from being a thing. It's just a less consistent thing now. But maybe it's enough. How do you even phrase that? Maybe it's less consistent enough that it won't be a thing anymore. But if Konami was only looking to address FTK bots, you'd expect to see the Ignite FTK addressed here in some capacity as well, but we're not seeing it. So that's kind of why I suspect it's as much, if not a little bit more, to do with the fact that burn decks can steal cheap games in best of 1 formats, as opposed to only bots. But all right, looking at the next semi-limited card here, now we're getting to some what I would call questionable choices, and I really would call them questionable choices. Like, normally I don't like to. Okay, this is going to sound kind of weird because I'm probably about the only Yu-Gi-Oh player who thinks this, but I don't usually like to go out of my way to rip on Konami too much. 1, because everybody else does it anyway. And 2, because, you know, with this channel, right, it's all about the game for me. I'm here to talk about gameplay. I'm here to talk about competitive decks. I'm here to talk about what makes good gameplay. I'm here to talk about the metagame. That's mostly what I'm here for. I'm not saying, you know, that maybe Konami doesn't sometimes make some questionable decisions, but I personally just feel I don't always have, like, a lot to add that other people aren't already saying when it comes to those things. And again, like I said, I like to focus more on, like, the gameplay aspect. However, here I will admit, because it ties into gameplay, that there are some decisions on this list that are fairly questionable. Sekka's Light definitely being one of them. I am not sure at all why this card got semi-limited. I mean, obviously it got semi-limited because it's being played in Adamanticators, and it was one of the cards that I guess Konami hit to address Adamanticators. But as we've been seeing, like, here on MasterDuelMeta.com, you know, it's in the last season, the usage of this card in Adamanticators has fallen significantly. I mean, when I first built Adamanticators at the start of Season 3, the start of Season 3, yep. This card was seeing play out 3 of in about 50% of Adamanticator decks. I think it's below 25 now. I guess we could go look real quick, but I don't want to leave the page for the video's sake. But suffice it to say, this card has lost a lot of popularity in Adamanticators over the last month and a half. And for Konami to then react by limiting it to 2 just kind of tells me they're a little bit out of touch with what the builds are looking like, which, if they have access to even half as much data as Master Duel Meta does, which you would hope they do, you know, Master Duel being their game and all, but you think they would have observed that for themselves. I don't know. That's just really, it's a very surprising card to see on the list for me. Like, the only other card that's even rogue that plays Sekka's Light is, like, Danger Kaijus, but that's, I don't know. It's not a bad deck at all, but I would struggle to even call that deck rogue. Like, that is definitely an outlier, so yeah, I don't know. It's a very confusing card to see on the list here. I guess as long as we're talking about Adamanticators, we'll move into the other 2 Adamanticator hits, which are kind of equally confusing to me. Analyzer goes to 2. Okay, I guess I understand maybe putting one of the Adamanticator tuners at 2. I don't know why it was Analyzer, though. You would think it would be Researcher. I consider, and I think most people, consider Adamanticator Researcher to be the best Adamanticator tuner, as it has the most generic summoning requirement, right? You just have to control any rock monster you can special it from your hand. Analyzer arguably has the most restrictive summoning requirement. Your opponent has to have a monster on the board. So that means you can only special Analyzer with its effect during, like, if you're going second. So again, and given that Adamanticators are known for their powerful first turn boards, this is another very, very confusing hit to me. I don't know why. Again, it's not necessarily confusing to me that an Adamanticator tuner got hit to 2. If you want to hit the deck lightly, which does seem to be the recurring theme with these semi-limits here, is Konami wanting to, like, very, very lightly touch a deck, as opposed to full-on, like, banning or limiting a key piece of their engine. Again, I don't know why Analyzer of the 3 tuners. That just does not make a whole lot of sense to me. I would think it would be Researcher, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's a reason I'm not seeing. I'm always open to that possibility. I just don't see it myself. Another Adamanticator hit, and another hit that's frankly a little bit confusing to me, is Prank Kids Roxy's to 2. This is definitely an Adamanticator hit, by the way. This is not a Prank Kids hit. If it is a Prank Kids hit, it's a very, very important one, because Prank Kids Roxy's is definitely the least important Prank Kids monster to their engine. And in fact, I think about 70, no, it's 60 and some change, I think. 60 and some change percent of Adamancer Prank Kids decks are already only playing 2 Roxys. Like, so that's why I say this is an Adamancipator hit, because as we all know, Roxys is a very, very good card in Adamancipator. Now, when I saw this, I did kind of consider, like, okay, am I going to have to take the Prank Kids engine out of Adamancipators? I think the answer is no, though. Like, I think this card going from 3 to 2 doesn't really affect it. You don't need 3 copies in order to utilize the Prank Kids engine. In fact, you only need 2. Which, again, makes this a very confusing hit to me. I mean, of course, it's going to make opening with Roxy's less consistent. And as we all know, if you open Roxy's plus Supplier, well, as we all know by now, if you've watched, like, my Adamancipator combo video or more or less any of my Adamancipator videos, but, you know, Roxy's plus Supplier, that is a full combo right there. So I guess that makes that a little bit less consistent. And obviously going from 3 down to 2 makes it less consistent to hit off of your Adamancipator tuners. But barely so. Like, it's not a whole lot of a difference. So I think moving forward with the ban list, my Adamancipator builds, my initial one anyway, will still use the Prank Kids engine. At least that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Of course, you know, I might do some more theory crafting and that might end up changing. But again, just a very confusing hit. Okay, so we did Sekka's Light, and then we talked about the other Adamancipator hits. Here we see Fusion Destiny at 2. Now, I think this is actually a very interesting thing to see on the list, because it gives us some hints for the future, right? So, obviously we know the reason to hit Fusion Destiny would be for the Destiny Hero, Destruction, Phoenix Enforcer, or whatever it's called. DPE. We all know DPE. But obviously that card is not in Master Duel yet. So what we're clearly seeing is a preemptive hit, right? Konami wants to hit Fusion Destiny now in order to prevent DPE from being too crazy later on. The fact that they've done it now tells me that DPE is going to come out before the next ban list does, which to me indicates that they will be out in the next wave of new cards that's released. Now, this is not at all indicative of when those cards are going to be released. I think more the duration of the Duel Pass is a better indicator of that. However, again, we know that Konami is thinking about the future with this ban list, at least in some degree, and we know that they are not planning on updating the ban list before DPE comes out. I think that was probably, you know, fairly obvious anyway, just given the timing of when this ban list released and when the new cards are going to release. But we're seeing a kind of confirmation with that here. Now, I'm not a TCG player. I've not played with Phoenix Enforcer, so I personally could not tell you how much semi-limiting Fusion Destiny is going to affect the deck, or the engine rather. I don't think it'll probably be much at all, because normally don't you just send it with Vert Anaconda anyway? I think it'll make it less consistent, obviously, because you won't be able to draw it as much and activate it as much from hand, but yeah, again, I don't know. I'm not a TCG player. I've never played with DPE myself, so I can't really speak to how impactful this change is. But again, we can still note those interesting factors about it, kind of regarding the future releases. Okay, next card we're seeing here is Phantom Knights Torn Scales at 2, and of course I just built Phantom Knights, but this is another change that, like, kind of hurts the deck's consistency a little bit, but not enough, I think, to majorly affect its power level. Honestly, the real baffling thing to me here is why they semied Torn Scales and not Tour Guide. Although, actually, I was also thinking about this too. I think they do specifically want to touch Phantom Knights here. I think they didn't hit Tour Guide because they want to leave it, like, more available for other decks to use. And I think also they're probably looking at just the sheer statistics of Phantom Knights, and obviously every Phantom Knights deck is playing 3 Torn Scales, but not every deck is playing even up to 3 Tour Guide. Some decks even play 0, which is fine, but again, I don't know why. Okay, so we're seeing kind of a recurring trend here that I'll just go ahead and flat out address now. We're seeing Konami hit these weird cards, kind of like Torn Scales and Analyzer and Sekka's Light, instead of addressing what we would consider to be more problematic cards, like for Adamancipator's Block Dragon, for Phantom Knights Rongomiad. Like, I don't know why we're not seeing those cards hit. Well, okay, even if we're not seeing those cards hit, it seems like we're instead being given these, like, kind of compensation, like, here's, you know, okay, we'll touch the deck a little bit, but we won't hit the main card. And I'm not really sure why that is, honestly. I couldn't tell you what Konami's thinking there. Maybe they want to keep the game accessible. Maybe they don't want to, like, take too many resources from players who have gone all in on these decks, because the resources are acquired a bit differently, obviously, than the TCG. But again, we have this line right here, or sorry, yeah, this line right here that states that, you know, newly restricted cards can be dismantled for 20 additional craft points. So if they're scared of hitting like ultra rares, which I did notice, by the way, none of these cards on this list are ultra rare. So I think that kind of plays into my theory that Konami does not want to hit cards that are like of high value, high rarity, so as not to hurt players, which I guess is nice if that's the way they're thinking. But again, we can still dismantle the banned cards for 20 additional craft points. Like, if that's the case, then obviously then it becomes more okay to hit the ultra rare cards. So I don't know. It just seems like in that regard, Konami's kind of sending mixed messages, if that is indeed the message they are trying to send. Similar story with Fractal to Torn Scales. I don't know why Fractal is at 2. Like, why wouldn't you just put Tenki to 1? Taking out one copy of Fractal is not nearly as impactful as 2 copies of Tenki, especially because Tenki can be used for combo plays that Fractal can't, and Tenki can search things that Fractal can't, like the Zodiac monsters. It's just, again, it's a baffling hit to me. I don't know why Fractal got put to 2 of all the cards. It makes more sense than Revolt, I guess, because if you want to actually impact the deck, then, you know, obviously everybody's playing 3 Fractal, but it's still pretty 50-50 whether you play 2 or 3 Revolt. So it makes sense to see Fractal here instead of Revolt. It just doesn't make sense to me to see Fractal here instead of Tenki. That's really, really bizarre to me. But, and also as a Trizu player, you know, as, like, Trizu being my main deck, like, yeah, it kind of sucks to see, but, like, again, it's not as impactful a hit as, like, Tenki to 1 or even Tenki to 2. It's just really, it's bizarre to me. But again, it also plays into this theory I have that they are specifically looking to hit Tri-Brigades. They want other Beast Warrior decks to be fine, and still have Tenki, which again, kind of, again, like I said, plays into my theory of Torn Scales here, right? They specifically want to hit Phantom Knights. They want other Fiend decks to still have access to Tour Guide, but they want Phantom Knights to get at least a little bit touched. So that's, again, what that says to me here. And that's what Fractal kind of says to me as well. And then we have Virtual World Roshi Lao Lao. Now, I'm not a Virtual World player, but I've played against them enough that like, of all the Virtual World cards, why this one? I feel like this is one of the ones I see the least. Again, I could be wrong, and maybe I'm just, like, misremembering past games, but this feels like another compensation hit, right? Like, everybody wanted VFD to get hit, the True Draco, King of All Calamities, I think is what it's called. You know, we all know the one, the rank 9. That Virtual World often pumps out. But again, it seems like instead of hitting the generic ultra rare card, they went and hit a lower rarity archetype specific card instead. But even then, of all the Virtual World cards to hit, why Lao Lao? Again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I don't think this is a super, like, impactful card to Virtual World strategy. I don't see it too often myself, and I don't even know that, you know, this card is always played at 3, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's weird. It's like, that seems like a Sekka's Light level hit to me, where I don't understand. Speaking of hits of that level, why is Cobalt Sparrow at 2? Tri-Brigade Lyrilusk has been pretty firmly tier 3 for quite a while now. I guess this is in response to, like, people complaining about Simorgh, but not even that many people were complaining about Simorgh. And again, we're seeing Konami hit a low rarity archetype specific card as opposed to the ultra rare general use card. Oh my god, we actually got a follow in the fucking middle of a video. I forgot to turn my alert box off. We got a follow in the middle of a video. Well, thank you, Phenomenal829, for following. Yeah, so again, I'm not quite sure what the story is here with this ban. Like, I was gonna say with Cobalt Sparrow, but with this ban list as a whole. Like, again, with all these, especially all these monster hits, we're seeing these low rarity archetype specific cards get semi-limited instead of the quote-unquote main problematic card, the card that everybody complains about, getting hit. Like, again, with Emancipator, it's Block Dragon. With Lyrilusk, it's Simorg. With Virtual World, it's VFD. With Trizu, it's... I don't know, it's probably more like Tenki or Revolt. People don't like complain about a whole lot with Trizu, but with Phantom Knights, it's Rongo Miad, you know, like... But we're not seeing any of those cards hit. So, I think this speaks a lot to Konami's mentality of what they want the ban list to be about, for this game in particular. And I'm not super sure I'm on board with it myself. I don't think necessarily all the cards I listed need to get hit. I think that's a very nuanced discussion to have that I couldn't possibly cover in this video, in addition to talking about the actual changes. But, oh, and then of course down here to Unlimited, we see Red Med going up to 3 copies. I think this is fine. This card doesn't really see play at all that much. Even Dragon Link, the main, you know, somewhat tiered deck, like Rogue or Tier 3 deck that plays this card, usually only plays 1 copy anyway. So I think this card's totally fine to come back to 3. They're like, that's fine. That's totally fine. It's these and I think these limits are both fine too. Again, the Conquistador is a little weird, but I'm not totally opposed to it. It's just these semi-limits are so confusing. So I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, I guess this is what we've got. As far as how much this is going to change up the meta, I'm not sure at this point. We are going to see a meta shakeup once the ban list drops. We inevitably do. I just, again, from this list, I don't know how much is going to change. I don't foresee the deck's current power levels changing that much, like the meta game as a whole, honestly. But I think for the most part, we're going to have to wait and see how the player base reacts and what they end up playing as a result, and then we'll see. Obviously, well, then at that point, we'll see how the ban list affects all these decks. But as far as like the theorizing for it, I can't even really do that much of it because I don't know that much is going to change, honestly. So yeah, do let me know in the comments below what you think of this ban list, what your thoughts are, what you think maybe Konami is thinking, like their theory behind why they hit the cards they did. I'd be very interested to know because this is an extremely curious list to me. I'm not super sure I know what Konami is doing here with it, but I think that's about all I've got for this one. This is going to be kind of not rushed out. Well, not actually, I'm not going to lie. This is going to be rushed out. I'm not going to be editing it. I'm just going to go ahead and post it as it is right now. So, yeah, thank you everybody for watching this ban list announcement video. Again, feel free to do comments down below what you think of the list and what you think maybe Konami's idea with the list is. If you have any more theories, I would love to hear them. I always love hearing from you guys in the comments, so do be sure to let me know your thoughts down below. But, okay, without further ado, this is XLex signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.